Welcome to Mystery Sauce. Today is Turtle Tuesday, so we're going to delve into a community's descent into barbarity, orchestrating the relentless torture of an innocent teenager. So before we dive in, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Also, I ask for your understanding regarding my accent. Some words may be more challenging for me to pronounce sometimes. I do want to warn everyone that today's story is pretty graphic. And it's a pretty depressing story of a young girl who was tortured. So please, just listen to the story. I think it's a lesson learned once you hear it that we should always pay attention to children who are asking for help. And we should do our best to help them in any way we can with the authorities or even with their mental health. So let's begin. So this represents one of the most shocking and dreadful offenses in the chronicles of American crime history. The organized mistreatment, torment, and ultimate killing of a guiltless 16-year-old girl. Her sole transgression was that she angered the woman who was supposed to look after her. However, the terrible maltreatment of Sylvia Likens suffered reveals just a fragment of the narrative. Adding to the atrocity of the crime is the fact that the torture was perpetrated by no fewer than 12 local children, with some being as young as 10. Okay, so Sylvia was a pretty 16-year-old girl. Her family was from Boone County to the northwest of Indianapolis, where her father, Lester, worked at various jobs to make a living. And in July 1965, Sylvia's mother, Betty, was serving a jail term for shoplifting, leaving Sylvia to care for her younger sister, Jenny, who was 13 years old. Jenny was shy, insecure girl who walked with a limp due to suffering polio as a child. And at that time, Lester Likens was separated from his wife. However, upon learning about the distressing situation of his daughters, he made his way to Indianapolis to search of them. And search brought him to 3850 East New York Street. Now it's a sprawling house belonging to Gertrude Baniszewski, where she lived with her 7 children: Paula, 17 years old, Stephanie, 15, John, 12, Marie, 11, Shirley, 10, James, 9, and Dennis, who was 18 months old. Sylvia and Jenny had ended up at the Baniszewski home after being introduced to Paula through someone they both knew. So when Lester Likens arrived at the house, Gertrude introduced herself as Miss Wright. The two of them struck up a conversation during which Lester mentioned that he and his wife had reconciled and were planning on going on the road with a traveling carnival. However, they had a problem as to who would care for the children. The boys, Danny and Benny, were staying with their grandparents, but they had no one to care for Sylvia and Jenny. And a deal was struck. Baniszewski agreed to take the girls in exchange for $20 a week. Now, during the initial week of Sylvia and Jenny's time at the Gertrude home, everything seemed normal. They attended school, they spent time with the Baniszewski kids, and went to church with Gertrude on Sundays. But the situation took a turn for the worse when the first $20 payment from Lester did not come through. This caused Baniszewski to become furious, yelling at the girls and then making them lay across a bed to beat their exposed buttocks with a paddle. And a week later, Sylvia and Jenny went collecting soda bottles for money to buy candy. When they returned home, Baniszewski accused them of stealing. Sylvia tried to explain how they made the money, but that only earned her another beating. And when Lester Likens arrived in town the following week to check on his girls, neither of them mentioned that they had been beaten. Shortly after, the Baniszewski clan attended a church social, and afterwards, the children told Gertrude that they were disgusted at the amount of food Sylvia had eaten at the function. And as punishment for this transgression, Gertrude forced Sylvia to eat hot dogs until she threw up. She then made the child scoop up the vomit and eat it. On Lester's next visit, Sylvia did not mention the incident to him at all. And by now, Baniszewski appears to have developed a pathological hatred for Sylvia, fueled in part of Sylvia's frequent clashes with Baniszewski's daughter, Paula. And in August 1965, an incident occurred that elevated the abuse to a new level. And after overhearing Sylvia's remark that she allowed a boy to fondle her, Baniszewski became enraged. She started hurling obscenities, calling Sylvia a prostitute. She then began beating the girl, then kicking her when she slumped to the floor. Later, when Sylvia tried to sit down, Paula whipped the chair away. "You ain't fit to sit in chairs," she sneered. From then on, Sylvia was only allowed to sit in a chair if Gertrude gave her permission. And during this period, Baniszewski started to include her own children in the mistreatment of Sylvia Likens, urging them to engage in games with her. These games typically resulted in Sylvia being assaulted or thrown down the stairs. And before long, she extended an invitation to individuals beyond her immediate family circle to participate in the ongoing torment. The first of those was 15-year-old Coy Hubbard, Stephanie's boyfriend. Coy claimed that he overheard Sylvia telling classmates that Paula and Stephanie Baniszewski had sex with boys for money. In revenge, he went to the Baniszewski home and beat Sylvia. From then on, Gertrude Baniszewski encouraged Hubbard to beat and kick Sylvia whenever he wanted to, and also to practice his judo on her. Baniszewski next recruited Anna Cisco, a 13-year-old girl. Anna had been Sylvia's best friend, but Baniszewski convinced her that Sylvia had been spreading rumors claiming that Anna's mother was a prostitute. She then instructed Anna to attack Sylvia. The similar ruse was used to recruit a friend of Paula, Judy Duke. Baniszewski even encouraged Sylvia's sister Jenny to join in the abuse. But when Jenny refused, whereupon Baniszewski punched her in the face until she complied. Yet, even as the level of abuse elevated, neither Jenny nor Sylvia said anything to their parents or to their teachers at school. Others also had a hint of what was going on and did nothing. In August 1965, a family named Vermillion moved in next to Baniszewski. A few days later, they held a barbecue and invited Gertrude and her brood. Sylvia was sporting a black eye, which Baniszewski probably told Phyllis Vermillion she had given it to her, then as if to illustrate her dominance over Sylvia. Baniszewski instructed Paula to throw a cup of boiling water in Sylvia's face. Phyllis Vermillion and her husband Raymond saw this and did nothing. Not long after the barbecue event, Sylvia returned from school and informed Baniszewski that she required a sweatsuit for her physical education class. Baniszewski declined to purchase it, prompting Sylvia to take one from school. Upon noticing the new gym attire, Baniszewski coerced Sylvia into admitting what she had done, then proceeded to beat and kick her. And then following this, she burned the tips of Sylvia's fingers with a cigarette lighter as punitive measure to remedy her sticky fingers. This cure precipitated a new form of abuse. Afterwards, everyone who smoked in the house took to putting out their lit cigarettes on Sylvia's skin. And a few days later, Sylvia again went collecting soda bottles. And when she returned home with the money she earned, Baniszewski accused her of prostitution. She then forced Sylvia to strip naked in front of her sons and several neighborhood boys and masturbate with a soda bottle. And as a result of this latest incident, Sylvia lost control of her bladder and began wetting the bed. Baniszewski then declared that she was no longer fit to live with humans and banished her to the basement. Locked down there without toilet facilities, Sylvia was forced to defecate and urinate on the floor. This enraged Baniszewski, who called her a dirty girl who needed to be cleansed. The Baniszewski's methods of achieving this was to tie Sylvia's wrists and ankles and then submerge the girl in a bath of scalding hot water. With Sylvia's burn still raw, she would then rub handfuls of salt into her skin. Baniszewski had by now added another recruit of torture team. He was 14-year-old Ricky Hobbs, an honor student from a middle-class family who had never been in any kind of trouble in his life. The boy appeared to be devoted to Baniszewski, which has left many commentators on this case to speculate that she took him as a lover. Whether that is true or not, Hobbs became Baniszewski's torturer-in-chief, carrying out her instructions without any questioning. While this was going on, the Baniszewski children had turned Sylvia into a kind of freak show attraction. They charged neighborhood children a nickel a time to come and gawk at her, naked and living in the basement among her own waste. And for an extra coin, the kids were allowed to beat Sylvia or push her down the stairs. Sylvia was by now a living skeleton. She was rarely fed, and when she was, it was invariably a thin broth, which she was instructed to eat with her fingers. And around this time, Baniszewski's 12-year-old son, John, began forcing her to eat her own feces. He also provided her with a bucket, instructing her to collect her urine in it, which he made her drink. And yet, even now, there was no help of Sylvia Likens. When Jenny managed to get a message to her older sister Diana, detailing the abuse, Diana wrote it off as the wild imaginings of a child. And when 12-year-old Judy Duke told her mother that she'd witnessed Sylvia being kicked and beaten, her mother said that Sylvia had probably earned her punishment. Even the clergy failed to get involved. When Baniszewski told her pastor, Roy Julian, about Sylvia, claiming that she was a prostitute, his only response was that they should pray for her. And while Baniszewski was accusing Sylvia of sleeping with men, her own daughter Paula was several months pregnant. Baniszewski would deny this to the bitter end, claiming that her daughter was a virgin, even after the signs of her pregnancy were obvious to everyone. Diana Likens, meanwhile, was having second thoughts about the note Jenny had sent her. When she tried to visit Jenny and Sylvia, Baniszewski refused her access to the house and threatened to call the police. Concerned, Diana contacted social services, but Baniszewski returned the social worker who called at the house away. She said she'd thrown Sylvia out as she wouldn't tolerate a prostitute under her roof. Then the social worker failed to check on the veracity of the story. She simply returns to her office and closes the file. And then October 21st, Baniszewski instructed John, Jr., Coy, Hubbard, and Stephanie to bring Sylvia up from the basement and tie her to a bed. She told Sylvia that if she could last the night without wetting the bed, she'd be allowed to sleep upstairs again. But of course, Sylvia, in her weakened condition, wasn't able to hurt her bladder. And as a punishment, they forced her to perform a striptease for some neighborhood boys, and then they masturbated again with a soda bottle. Afterwards, Sylvia was allowed to dress, but then for no apparent reason, Baniszewski lost her temper and began accusing Sylvia of spreading lies about her daughters. "You have branded my daughters, so I will brand you," she screamed. She then forced Sylvia to strip and had Paula, Coy, and Ricky Hobbs gag her and tie her down. While Baniszewski's 10-year-old daughter, Shirley, heated a large sewing needle until it was red hot, Baniszewski and Hobbs used the needle to carve the words, "I'm a prostitute and proud of it." And across Sylvia's stomach, the cuts were deep, and the third-degree burns rendered by the needle would have left the scars impossible to remove, even with plastic surgery. Baniszewski then taunted her victim. "What are you going to do now, Sylvia? You can't get married now. You can't undress in front of anyone. What are you going to do now?" Sylvia was then untied and was carried back to the basement of Coy Hubbard. She was able to stand, but Hubbard still took the opportunity to practice some of his judo throws on her. And that night, Jenny sneaked into the basement to visit her sister. "I'm going to die," Sylvia told her. "I can tell." Shortly after Jenny left, Baniszewski inexplicably went down to the basement and brought Sylvia upstairs. She allowed her to sleep on one of the upstairs beds that night. And around noon the following day, Baniszewski woke her, took her into the bathroom, and gave her a warm bath. She then dressed Sylvia and told her there was a letter she needed her to write to her parents. She dictated the letter. It read as follows: "Dear Mr. and Miss Likens, I went with a gang of boys in the middle of the night, and they said that they would pay me if I would give them something, so I got in the car and they all got what they wanted. And when they got finished, they beat me up and left sores on my face and all over my body. And they also put on my stomach, 'I am a prostitute and I'm proud of it.' I have done just about everything that I could do just to make Gertie mad and cost Gertie more money than she's gotten. I've tore up a new mattress and peed on it. I've also cost Gertie doctor bills that she really can't pay for and made Gertie a nervous wreck and all her kids." For some reason, Baniszewski instructed Sylvia not to sign the letter. And after Sylvia finished the letter, Baniszewski called John Jr. and Jenny over and told them she wanted them to take Sylvia to a local garbage dump and leave her there to die. Sylvia overheard the conversation and tried to make a run for the front door. In her weakened state, she was easily hauled in. Baniszewski then beat her in the face with a curtain rod. And on the following day, Baniszewski and Coy Hubbard arrived in the basement and beat Sylvia unconscious with a chair and a broomstick. That night, Sylvia tried to attract attention by banging a cold shovel against the concrete floor. Several neighbors would later report that they heard a commotion, but decided not to call the police. It was the last chance for Sylvia Likens. The next day, October 26, Baniszewski told Stephanie and Ricky to bring Sylvia back upstairs for a bath. They later fully clothed in the water, but it was soon apparent that she wasn't breathing. Stephanie tried CPR, but it was too late. Sylvia Likens was dead. With a dead body to deal with, Baniszewski quickly sprung into action. She instructed her children to take Sylvia's body to the basement and strip it naked. She then sent Ricky Hobbs to a nearby payphone to call the police. And then when the officers arrived, she gave them the letter. She forced Sylvia to write. The girl had been a prostitute, she said, and as the letter proved, she had been killed by her own customers. However, even a cursory glance at the corpse told the officers that the death was not the result of a single incident, but of protracted abuse. Baniszewski, along with Paula, Stephanie, John, Hobbs, and Hubbard, were all arrested for murder. Other neighborhood children who were in the house at the time, Mike Monroe, Randy Leeper, Judy Duke, and Anna Sisco, were arrested for injury to a person. Although the charges were later dropped, murder charges against Stephanie were also later dismissed, leaving Baniszewski, Paula, John Jr., Hobbs, and Hubbard to face the music. Meanwhile, an autopsy on Sylvia Likens revealed the true extent of the horrors she endured. Her body had over 100 cigarette burns, various second and third degree burns, severe bruising, and muscle and nerve damage. In her death throes, she bit in through her lips, nearly severing them. Her private area cavity was nearly swollen shut due to repeated beatings. And although an examination proved that she was still a virgin, disproving Baniszewski's accusation that she was a prostitute. The cause of death was recorded as a hemorrhage of the brain. Gertrude Baniszewski, John Baniszewski, Paula Baniszewski, Ricky Hobbs, and Goy Hubbard went on trial for murder in May 1966. Despite the young age of some of the defendants, John and Ricky Hobbs were just 13 and 14. The prosecution stated its intention to seek the death penalty for all involved. Paula's court time was interrupted when she was rushed to the hospital to give birth to the child that her mother had insisted she was not carrying. And on the stand, Gertrude stuck doggedly to her associations that Sylvia was a prostitute and a troublemaker who caused constant discord in her home. In order to back up these accusations, her defense called the young Baniszewski children to the stand. However, this strategy backfired, spectacularly when 11-year-old Marie broke down on the cross-examination. Although she quite obviously been coached, the little girl suddenly screamed out, "God help me," before branding her mother a liar and providing a graphic description of everything that had gone in that house, of how her mother and siblings had tortured and killed Sylvia. Based in large part on Marie's testimony, Gertrude was found guilty of first-degree murder. However, the punishment was not the one the prosecution sought. She was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. A later trial will reduce that sentence to 18 years to life. Paula was convicted of a second-degree murder, but later struck a deal by pleading to voluntary manslaughter. She served 3 years before being paroled. And John, Coy, and Ricky Hobbs were each convicted of voluntary manslaughter and sentenced to 18 months in a juvenile detention facility. Hobbs was released at 17 and shortly thereafter suffered a nervous breakdown. He died of lung cancer at age 21. After his release, John Baniszewski changed his name to John Blake. He later became a lay minister. Gertrude was granted parole on December 4th, 1985. Despite a public campaign to oppose her release, she died of lung cancer in 1990. A memorial commemorating Sylvia Likens was dedicated at Willard Park on East Washington Street in Indianapolis. And on June 22, 2001, the house where she met her horrific death was demolished in 2009. Well, this concludes my story for today. Everyone, if you found today's true crime tale interesting, then hitting the like and subscribe button would mean a lot to me. Thanks for joining us, and until our next episode, keep it saucy.